Welcome to the ALTIS Podcast. I'm your host, Stu McMillan. I've been meaning to do this for a while now, and I guess the impetus to finally sit down and do it is our upcoming Speed Summit in Chicago. If you haven't grabbed your ticket yet, the ALTIS Speed Summit, presented by 3x4 Genetics, is set to be the most impactful speed event ever held. Over 3 days in early June, we're bringing together some of the top coaches, scientists, and performance leaders for deep, hands-on learning, challenging the way we think, train, and coach. Massive thanks to our sponsors, 3x4 Genetics, Stat Sports, 1080 Sprint, and Team Builder for helping us bring in some incredible speakers and create something truly special. Check out altis.world for more information. Early bird prices are in effect until, I believe, March 21st. All right, so to kick things off, I sat down with my good friend Les Spellman. I've known Les for almost a decade, but it hasn't really been until the last few years that I've got to know him pretty well, especially through our team speed events with Danny Foley down in Grand Cayman and recently here in Phoenix. And I couldn't think of a better guest to start with than Les. I began by asking him, what does he do and why does he do it?
I think I've only identified with like two archetypes in my life. So first, I identified as an athlete when I was an athlete, and then second, coach. Like that's the only way like I can identify myself. Almost to the point where like my family thinks I'm a gym teacher still. So they don't really know the difference between like what I do and what like my middle school gym teacher did.
Yeah.
But truthfully, like I feel like that's the only thing that I feel like resonates like with my identity when I say like I'm a coach. Like someone could say like, oh well, you could say businessman, or you could say like I own some businesses, but I don't. It's just so secondary and just it doesn't feel aligned with like what I actually do on a daily basis. Like I feel most connected to myself when I'm coaching. Like I really enjoy coaching, and I've had a
So
resurgence.
so the follow-up from then is, all right, what do you coach? What do you mean? Do you say I'm a coach, or do
Yeah,
you say I coach blank, blank, and blank?
yeah. I coach athletes mainly like I help athletes get faster. But most of the work I've done outside the NFL Combine in the past 18 months has had a little bit to do with speed and most of it to do with performance and health, like just helping players, perform better and stay healthier. Like the Olympics was almost nothing to do with speed at all. Like there was a little bit of speed work within it, but it was like more macro. But yeah, I would say mostly just like I coach people to run faster and perform better for sports for athletes. So
Which part of that do you prefer? The run faster bit or the perform better, stay healthier, like the more macro part or the more micro part?
yeah, I think I'm starting to realize I like the more like macro part, and part of that is a little bit of PTSD, just like in coaching roles that I've had, where I go in and a coach says like I want you to teach technique, and their arm sucks, I want you to fix it, and like I'm judged on how much I fix their arms or little things, like I have a little bit of PTSD on that, and going through that through the Olympics or through different teams or different things. Like I've wanted to branch out and zoom out, but I didn't have the credentials. So I just started practicing and working to learn like different pieces and understanding like the sports science side or like the loading side. And then now like where I love to live is more almost as like a manager where I can see the macro, but I'm still involved in the micro like day to day. Like I'm still coaching and doing things, but I think I told you this offline that I'm really enjoying the combine right now, even though I know we said we wouldn't talk about it, but I'm enjoying it because I'm taking a more macro approach to it and taking responsibility for all the pieces and like understanding that how all these pieces work together and then seeing which lever to pull. Which
How
I
did
don't.
how did you develop the skills to understand how to do that? Because that's a very different job, right? Coaching kids, college pros to get faster, that's a job.
Yeah,
And then coaching the entire health and performance, or coaching it from an entire health and performance perspective, and managing a health and performance team, that's another job altogether. Like, how
Yeah.
do you learn how to do that?
I
Or
don't,
you're just kind of figuring out.
yeah, I would say I don't know if I've learned it. I think I'm learning, but I have a pretty high tolerance for failure and risk when it comes to it. So like I can go into something with very little confidence that I'm good at it and still have the confidence to go after it every day. So
Mm,
like I I know I'm probably not the best manager. I know I'm probably not I don't understand the health side. I don't understand this side, but I'm very confident that in the moment I can find out how to do something. And I have a high tolerance for failure. So it's just like I try to learn things really fast, but the only way that I learn, you've probably seen this from me, is like I just throw myself in and I try to learn as fast as I can.
mm.
It's the only way I can learn. Like I can't learn the traditional way of like read a bunch of stuff, get certified, understand it, do a mentorship, and then go. Like I have to be in it and I have to be like in a high pressure situation. I don't know if that's good or bad, but like for example, when I work in let's say I get an athlete and he has like a couple weeks and there's a problem, it's very easy for me to like dial in my focus so deep and put all my energy and effort into it for the next couple weeks. Like I love that stuff, but it's very hard for me when it's like, hey, here's a long term project. You have to learn this, learn this, learn that. I don't do well in those scenarios. That's probably why I'm in the private world, to be honest with you.
If you remember, we talked a lot about that in Cayman, right? So
Mhm.
we did that team speed event down there,
Yep,
and we talked about how some people tend to learn through dealing with their own problems in a bottom-up, emergent fashion. Like,
yep,
here's a problem in front of me, let me solve that problem. And you learn about the world through the problems that you encounter.
yep,
And then other people need a little bit more structure. And then you zoom out and they learn about these things. And then they go about their work and they find problems. Oh, yeah, I've seen that. I know how to do that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and then others are obviously a combination of the two. It seems to me like we had this conversation down in Cayman, I remember. Like you're very much like, what is in front of me today? Let me figure out how to solve that as fast as I can, as effectively and as efficiently as I can, and move on. And I learn about this job and the work and everything else that's around it just by dealing with what's in front of me right now.
for sure. I mean, I even had a conversation with some athletes a couple weeks ago where I was like, hey, we tried something and it didn't work. So let's just move forward and try something else.
Yeah.
And like I think over the past couple of years, like that's kind of been my approach where it's like, let's try something. Let's take a little bit of a risk because usually I get in scenarios where like I told you that the Oregon guys got here like in February. I was like, okay, I have to figure something out. So let's try it. And I think right now where I'm at on the managing side and like having a bigger team, we had 22 people, is like, all right, I'm just gonna ask for feedback every day until I figure out how this works. And like, I mean, I'm getting crushed in the feedback sometimes, but I'm cool with that because it doesn't, for some reason, like it never really affects me from like a personal side. I don't take it personal. Like I can separate like coach best and I can separate me as like a dad and my life and how I'm living it. So like if somebody says like you're an awful coach, terrible what you do, like I can say, oh yeah, that's probably true on the coach side, but it has no effect on me like personally. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting.
How do you know, like you've mentioned feedback there, like how do you know when you failed? Like you say, I'm just going to go and I've got this big tolerance for failure. How do you know if you have failed? And how do you identify that? Or how do you differentiate that between this is just a nonlinear way of life?
Hmm. In coaching or just like with people or
Yeah,
both.
all of that, like you said,
Yeah,
that's kind of how you learn, right? You fail. How do you know you failed? How do you know it's just, all right, I'm just figuring it out. I haven't failed yet.
yeah. I think it's like I'm pretty OCD about setting up the systems. So like
Mm,
for example, like we'll set up like the force plates and the external load, and there's always checks and balances. So like one way to tell if I failed, for example, was like, all right, everybody pops up red on our, health document. Everyone's red. It's not just like one person. It's like this person has a groin, this person has a hamstring, this person. It's like, okay, well, whatever I did was a failure. That's like one level.
yeah.
Another level is like performance. So like, all right, we tried a block of training out for 2 weeks and then we unloaded and then we tested and everyone got worse, like
Mm,
clear failure. But then the other way is like that's like the more objective, obvious, like simple, because if we're dealing with speed, it's very simple to see if someone got faster or not. But I think the deeper level of it is like looking at the team dynamics, where you start to see people like their energy changing or communication start to drop off, or like I don't know, like we'll have times where people just start getting in small cliques with each other, and then not in the big group anymore, or not participating, and then you just have to look back and it's like, okay, well, what did I do like a week ago that might have added to this? So it's more subjective, and then you have to actually have like the relationship side. And I think in management now, like dealing with a group of 22 people, or dealing with the athletes that we had 22 people working with us and 22 athletes, so 44 people.
Hmm.
And it got really difficult at times
Remember,
because you
remember
had,
when we said we're not going to talk about the combine at
oh
all?
no, here we go. It's hard. It's the only thing that's on my mind. You couldn't even, if you ask me my last name, I may not tell you. Right? I don't know,
Well, it says
but
Owen right there on your screen.
yeah, I
Triana
know it's my
Owen. So
wife.
my guess is Owen.
um, but yeah, like you start to realize like you have to come down on certain people at certain times. You have to be stricter. You have to be harder. And I just keep thinking about like having kids. It's like if you're gonna come down on people, you have to give them like twice as much love. So that's been a whole new thing. It's like I'm used to just running like a very black and white system. It's like either you failed or you didn't fail. Um, and now it's like I have to be a little bit gray because I have to understand that it's like we're dealing with people and humans that have emotions and feelings and all those things. So that's been the biggest challenge for me. 44 people figuring that out. So
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what the basis of my question was, right? Like, how do you know? Like, it's very very rarely is it that black and white.
yeah,
All right, this
yeah,
is failure. I'm going to learn from that and
yeah.
move on. Often, it doesn't, those failures don't show up until way, way later down the road. And oh yeah, remember that thing I did? Yeah,
Hmm.
I shouldn't have done that. And sometimes
Hmm.
years. So
Hmm.
sometimes those lessons come quick and sometimes they don't take, not so quick.
Yeah.
That's what you do. Why do you do it?
Mm. I love problem solving. I love problem solving. And someone asked me this other day, is like, do you just love speed? And I was like, not really. Like I definitely love coaching it because it's something I understand. But like I think if I ended up being a football coach and that was like my path, I would have loved that, or a soccer coach, or just anything in that realm. But I love problem solving. And the problems to me in this like performance world, when I'm in it and looking at it, like it makes sense to me. Um, and that's why I'm attracted to it, I think. But for me, it's all about problem solving and it's all about people and relationships. So I have a crazy experience when I was 17 where I broke my femur in a car accident, ended up in a wheelchair, and then like wrote down some goals. And I was like, all right, in 18 months, I'm gonna run, and I'm gonna I think I said run a half marathon, and I'm going to go to the Olympics, right? And I just wrote it down on a piece of paper. And 18 months later, I didn't run a half marathon, but I ran 10 miles. And then 2 weeks later, I walked onto a Division 1 track team. And I was like, all right, I can just do anything now. Like that's my brain went to like, okay, the next step is the Olympics. And obviously, like I didn't make it to the Olympics as an athlete, but I did as a coach. And like that experience of like going through a really big problem and then figuring out how to solve it all day, like obsessing over it. And in that obsession process, I tried everything. Like I read books, I I was drinking teas, I was doing all different types of crazy stuff to try to get to that thing that I wrote on the paper. And that obsession was like the most fun I ever had. Like that was the most fun I've ever had in my life, was going from wheelchair to walking, and then
Mm.
walking to jogging, and then jogging to running and running. So for me, like coaching is that process, and I became obsessed with that. And now, like I'm so attached to that feeling that I had when everything kind of worked out, that I just want to keep doing it for other people. And I'm obsessive about like recreating that experience in other people, and I can see it. And it's like when that moment hits, I'm like, oh, there it is. And I get addicted and I want more of it and more of it, more of it. And it's really fun because it's so transformational. It's like what you can do with a really like weird skill set, like training people how to run. It's if you really think about like if aliens came down, it's like, what do you do? And I'm like, I help people run faster. They're like, why would you do that? Like but it's cool to me because like it really does transform people. Like I've seen it happen. It happened for us last week. I promise we wouldn't talk about combine, but like we're celebrating. My voice is still hoarse from it, but it was that same moment that I had from wheelchair to walking to running to
Mm.
all of that. So yeah,
So,
that's super
so
clear.
I, so I don't think your reason is because you love to solve problems.
Mm,
Like that's the answer to the question there was because I love to solve problems.
mm-hmm.
But that wasn't the reason. Like what you came to at the end is there was a challenge there that you really, really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Going from wheelchair to walking to running. And then there's another challenge where you helped some young man change his life.
Mm,
That wasn't solving a problem. I mean,
mm,
there's very few jobs on the planet where they don't involve solving problems. You can argue that many of them have way more interesting problems than the problems that we see every day.
yeah.
So I don't, so what is it then? It's like you are a coach.
Yeah.
Solving problems is part of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
But if solving problems was your why, there's lots of things that you could go and do that you could still solve problems, whether that's being
Yeah.
an architect or whatever, you know what I mean? Or a mechanical engineer. You got all sorts of things all sorts of problems that you can solve. You
Yeah.
can be a politician, man. Like it's talk about some
Yeah.
problems, right? So
No, for
what
sure.
is it? Is it the specific nature of the problem that why you do this?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there
That's
something
deep.
else about it?
I think it just makes sense to me. Like it because of my like issue with my leg and having
Mm.
a metal pole. Like I obsessed over solving my own problems and studying the body and figuring things out. Like it just makes sense. It became like my language. It became
It's kind of
like
maybe what we were saying before, like
yeah,
you work your way through life through encountering these problems and then learning how to deal with them yourself.
yeah,
And that's how you attack life. And maybe that's kind of why you ended up doing what you're doing as well, is solve
yeah,
problems. Yeah, that was cool. Let me try and find something that I can do where I can continue to do this.
100%. Like I mean, I used to sit on my porch in DC and watch people walk and study their walking gait and take notes
Yeah,
because I was like trying to figure out how to walk.
right.
So like if that's your lens for I mean, you're asking me questions I haven't. It's so ingrained in like my body, I haven't even thought of. But looking back, like I spent, you know, how many hours a day doing that for? I was 17, so 18 years
Yeah.
of like being hyper aware of like watching people move and figuring that out. Also had a brain injury, so I had to like relearn how to learn and
Mhm.
all of that. So like that whole process, it's just been my lens. Like I can't unsee it. Like if I was a lawyer, I would be bored because like I'm not looking at humans move. I'm looking at something else, another set of problems. Like, but for the body, like watching the human body, like I used to draw human bodies as a kid, so I've always been obsessed with humans and how they move and how they do things and all of that. So yeah, now looking, you're making me go deep, but I think it's always been an obsession. It just got highlighted with my
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah, and do you think, have you found over the course of time you've been doing this, you say 18 years ish? Yeah,
Well, 18 years since my accident.
right, since your
So
accident.
like the first half of that 18
Yeah,
years is me as an athlete. The second
yeah,
half is me as a coach.
coach.
Yeah.
How often do you ask yourself, Les, is this really what I want to do?
All the time.
Just all the
I
time?
was asking myself that last week. But yeah, it is. I love it. Like I
Yeah. So the answer is
absolutely
always, yeah, I
always
love it.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's really the question is like, why do you do this? Like we're sitting in Indianapolis and like a crappy Airbnb and ups and downs and like we don't we're not sitting there thinking about how much money we made. We're sitting there thinking about is he gonna push hard on his third step? Like it's crazy. I'm just like this is crazy. This is not like a real like. It's funny because I was like, this is not a real stressor. It shouldn't be, but it is. Like I'm having a stress response to
Yeah.
things like, and I'm like, this is insane that I'm having a stress response to 0.01 seconds on someone's
Mhm.
40. Like, why do I do it? But
Right.
I love it. I'm addicted to it. It's so fun to me. Like, I can't wait. I'm so depressed when I'm not coaching. It's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know. So
It's, we've talked about this a lot, and I shared with you quite a bit over the last year or so. But, it's when I look back at the last, probably since COVID, like since
mm,
COVID, say 20, I didn't really enjoy coaching. So from
mm,
20 to 24, it wasn't much fun for me.
mm,
It was okay. But when I asked myself that question, I was having real hard time answering it. Like, why do I continue to coach? To
yeah,
the point where I didn't know, as I told you before, I didn't know whether I would be continuing to coach for this next quadrennial. Like we go in quadrennials in track, right? So
yeah,
next games is 28. So when you're signing up to coach, you're signing up for the next 4 years.
mm,
And when you're going to stop, you kind of stop at, all right, this was a natural
yeah,
point for me. The end of the Paris Olympics. Okay, do I really want to continue doing this? Is this really what drives me? And it wasn't. Like, I
mm,
wasn't digging it, man.
mm,
And I was digging a lot of the other things that I was doing. And it's funny, like it's totally the opposite.
really.
Yeah,
Why?
totally the opposite. Like right now, I can't think of me doing anything other than coaching. Like coaching,
Really?
why I get up again, It's
Yeah,
really, really enjoying the problems that I'm seeing every day and that I'm encountering and trying to solve and work through. And I'm enjoying the people I'm coaching with, and I'm enjoying the people I'm coaching. Like it's a very, very different experience than it's been over the course of the last 4 years, where, all right, yeah, I'm still a coach.
wow.
And those questions, I think sometimes we take them for granted, right? We
Hmm.
end up just doing the thing just because that's kind of what we do. And
Yeah,
it's the thing that we've always done. And it's now we're kind of good at it and we're kind of pot committed, like this is what I'm in now, and I don't
yeah,
know anything else. And I'm 40 or 30 or whatever, where we always have the power to change course, and I'm a little bit lucky. I've got a company as well, so we've got these entrepreneurial things and these courses. I can choose to just be a coach educator, no problem.
yeah,
I can choose to just be a manager, no problem. Or I can choose to, unfortunately, I can't choose to just be a coach because I still
yeah.
have to do these other things too.
I
But
know. That's my biggest struggle.
yeah, I think it's really important that we continue to ask ourselves those questions. Honestly, continuously.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the struggle I think I hit now is like I think all I want to do is coach sometimes. And like as you know, like if I just did that, like I would not be able to live. Like it doesn't
Same with
I
me.
mean, I
Yeah.
could I like there's jobs out there where you could just coach for sure. Um, but like in my current world right now, like
So
that
why don't like I know my answer to that. I can do that too, right? So both of us, if we do have the choice, if we wanted to just coach, both of us could do that
mm,
tomorrow. Like you could just put your hand up and say, "Hey, I don't want to do this Spellman performance thing anymore.
yeah,
I want a job."
yeah,
And you could choose your pick of jobs in NFL, NCAA, whatever, right? We know that. And I could do similar. I wouldn't maybe get NCAA. I wouldn't get the high quality jobs that you would get, but I'd
hmm.
get some jobs, right?
I don't know.
So we have a choice, but we don't. We continue to do this. So why do you do that? Why do you continue adding all of this chaos and complexity to your life and all this work and this stress and doing things that you don't know how to do and you're not comfortable doing and you may not be even that good at yet, but you
Mm.
still do it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think about that way too often, but more recently, it's been like kind of what we started with is like I can take a risk and fail, and it's just I own it. It's mine. But like these, universities and teams and things like that, like there's a very small margin for failure, an appetite for failure, and it's a very unilateral group. Like if you work with a football team, it's that 53 players or that 100 players, like you're kind of stuck with. And obviously, there's problems within that, but like my last year, I went to Paris with a rugby team. I did an off season with the NFL player that basically missed training camp, and we simulated training camp. I had 16 U.S. level soccer players from 25 years old down to 13, like in different age groups. I traveled all around the world. I spoke a different, like that experience and that chaos is like,
Mm.
that's that's my ADD probably, but that's the way I love to live my life. And like I don't I always ask myself like, is this sustainable? Is like, could I do this again next year? And usually in the moment it's no, but then like as the next year rolls around, I'm like, I can't wait to see what pops up. And I love the random nature of that, like being able to just pop in and out of different experiences. Um, I don't know. Like I haven't had the football experience. I haven't worked for a team. I really don't know. Like obviously I've done the consulting stuff, which was cool. A lot of fun, but I don't really have a comparable experience, but I'm not tired of what I'm doing yet. It doesn't, I don't lose energy on it. Like I gain energy on it, which is weird because it's draining, you know?
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Mhm.
Um, Tell me something that you do that people would be surprised about.
Oh wow. Something that I do that people would be surprised about. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Give me more, give me a
Could
deeper.
be something in your work,
Mm,
like something that, you do this within your coaching that really Les Spellman does that. That's interesting.
mm.
Cool. I didn't know that. Or it could be something about you personally. All right, Les likes to go and eat German kielbases
Yeah.
on a Tuesday night with a big massive pint of beer. Like, is
Oh.
there anything in there that like you've done a zillion podcasts? So it's like, what would surprise people if they heard, yeah, Les, that really? Nah, Les doesn't do that.
I don't know what would surprise you, but like I'm I'm pretty interesting. Like I need like my family time is everything. So that's also a reason why I haven't taken like another job because like picking my kids up from school is like a big deal to me, and playing with my kids is a big deal. And I want four kids, which is crazy.
You
Like
want four?
four,
You have two right now.
yeah, two right
Or two,
now,
you want two more?
two more,
Okay. Why
and
do you
like
want, you want four kids? That surprises me. So there you go. You've come up with.
yeah, that's a surprise, especially in the climate right now. I think I out of everything, like I love being a dad more than anything else. Like it's the ultimate coaching job. It's the ultimate relationship, and it's almost like it's my life has kind of gone backwards and flipped a little bit. So now it's like I take the lessons I've learned from coaching and I apply it to my family life. So I'm like, oh, that didn't work. Or like the way that I responded in that relationship was negative. So now I know not to do that with my daughter.
Right.
Like it's kind of weird. My perspective is kind of like inside out now. Where it was very outside in. Like I could say I walked through, I don't know, 2013 to 2022, 21, kind of like sleepwalking through. Like I almost don't remember a lot of things. Like I look at pictures, I'm like, I barely remember that. It was
Hmm.
in 2021. It was like,
Why,
or
why do you think that is?
2022.
I'm the exact same way. And I think
Yeah.
about that all the time. Like I have a terrible memory for stuff. Like I just do the thing and I move on and I do the thing and I move on. I can barely remember what I did last week, never mind
Yeah.
a decade ago. It's almost like it's a different person.
Yeah. I look back at 2022 and I'm like, what? Like, I'll give you a good example. Draft night 2022. I know it was the best night of my life because I said it in a group text, but I don't remember much. And it wasn't because I was drinking, because I didn't drink. Um, I don't know. I think I'm so adrenaline filled at that point in my life. And I'm so like, move to the next thing, accomplish everything, chase everything down, become the best. I'm like, I think it was a little like ego driven a little bit at first because I don't know, like I applied for jobs at all the major facilities and didn't get it. And I applied for jobs in all the schools. This is like 2013, didn't get it. So
Mm.
like I went on like a 10-year run of just like I'm pissed off and want to beat everyone.
Right.
And I was so adrenaline filled
Do you
on these
still have
moments.
that as a motivator that like a little pissed off the industry and you just want to beat everybody? Maybe not
No,
the industry, but you still want to win, and that's kind of a motivation for you.
I want to win against the standard that I set, like kind of whatever I write down, I want to beat that. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but like it's not driven externally at all anymore. It's
Mhm.
very internal.
Yeah.
internally driven, but I was very externally driven. And I think that's why I was so disconnected with like my feelings and how I felt on stuff. Like I didn't get tired. I crushed energy drinks. I haven't drank coffee since December, by the way, but that's a whole other conversation. Um, but yeah, so I crushed energy drinks. I didn't sleep. I worked out 5 hours a day. I mean, I was a machine. I was a monster. I
Mm.
was a machine. I didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
And then when I had my kids, all of a sudden I like had to regulate myself because I had to put them to sleep at a certain time. And then I'm realizing like, damn, I'm tired too. I'm gonna go to sleep now, And then I started getting more sleep, and I started regulating things, and I was just like, whoa, like I can't even tell you how much fun I had in those years, even though I know it was a lot because the stories are crazy. I could tell you the story, but I have no emotion to it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, I slept through all this stuff. And I
Yeah.
didn't feel any of it. It's super
Why
weird.
do you think that is?
It,
Like
it's a
looking
tra-
back.
Well, to be honest, like I don't know how deep we're going in this podcast, but it's a trauma response. Like it's a it's a it's a coping mechanism that I developed when I was younger that saved my life.
Mm.
Right. So like being able to block out negative things or whatever also means you're blocking out the positive things. So if you block out the negative, you end up neutral, and then you just start like I was living in that, for years because I thought that was a default way to survive. Like it was very much survival to the point where like I mean I'm still checking my bank account every time I buy something that's $1. Like I was just in like pure survival mode and terrified that like something would go wrong and everything would be wiped out. Like I just lived my life like that. So every single project I took on, I was like, I have to do this or I won't eat. I have to do this or I won't survive. I have to do this or I won't have a place to live. All survival. So I go through and I apply that and it worked. It to be honest, like it works. Like I did everything. I would sit there and write a course in 4 days, or I would sit there and bang out a bunch of work, or I'll learn R, or I'll learn whatever, and I could just bang through stuff. And my wife is sitting there looking at me like, "You haven't slept in 3 days or ate anything, and what are you doing?" Like it was the first time in my life where I'm like, someone's telling me like, "Yo, the way you live is like kind of not good. Like you're gonna die like this." And yeah, it was all trauma responses to things. So yeah, it's deeper than I expected, but yeah.
So, like that still clearly drives you today to some, I mean, you're obviously a lot calmer. You got two kids, you got a
Hmm.
family, you got all that other stuff. But when something like, and I know we said this, we weren't going to talk about it, but you can repeatedly talk about it. So now it's
It's
story's
already here.
open for me to come in,
Yeah.
talk about the combine that you just went through. And like that is this short 6, 7 week thing that there's a really explicit objective to it
Yeah.
where you can be really driven for 7 weeks. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
you can be, it doesn't matter what is your motivation. You could use hate as your fuel.
Hmm.
It will be a good fuel for 7 weeks. It won't
Yeah.
get you 7 years, but it might
Yeah.
get you 7 weeks. And do you then find that for periods like that, all right, we got
Hmm.
4 weeks, we got 3 weeks, we got 7 weeks of these combine, that you kind of revert back to old less just for that period? Like, does that
Yeah.
serve you in a way, or just are you able to park that and just move on and now just be zenned out, big picture, zoomed out less, where, all right, whatever, man, it's all right. I'll deal with this now.
No, I
You
definitely
find to
go
get
back
the
in.
best out of you that you need to actually dive deep into that kind of darker side of yourself.
Yeah, I have to. But it's like it's with guardrails. So like I have to be very conscious of like the choices I make before I go in. It's like, all
Hmm.
right, these are the boundaries. Like you gotta sleep 7 hours. You gotta go to sleep at this time, wake up at this time. You gotta eat. I took out caffeine because like it sounds stupid, but like if I say okay, it's okay to drink coffee, I might drink 13 cups a day to get the job done
Yeah,
during combine training.
right.
So I just had to cut it out completely because like I have zero control. And like, when I get into work and I'm just like get the job done, I'm like coffee, 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 energy drink. So I set the boundary early, like tea only. Sleep 7 hours.
How many teas are you
Um,
drinking a day? Don't say
uh,
30.
no, not more than two. Like
Okay.
one or two tea
Okay.
bags total. Like one or two tea bags total.
Right. Right.
And black tea, I didn't introduce black tea until February, so it's just green tea.
Okay.
Or like I had mint tea the first month really. Like yeah, so it was normal. So then I have the boundaries set up, and then I just go as hard as I can within those boundaries. So I get really, I think one of the trauma responses I have is like I get really OCD on things like time, or you can ask Danny, like everything's got to be on time, or like everything's got to be color coded, and everything has to start the day the same way. So like it has to be in the right order. So I get really, it's good and bad because it's good from a systematic standpoint because it's you can expect you can predict what's going to happen. Um, and I think that's where I live is like I need to live in a world where I feel like I can predict and control things. So I'll do a little bit more on that side. Personality changes a little bit more. Like I'm normally calm and happy and chill. When I get into coach mode during the combine, it's like definitely more intense. And I don't talk as much. Like I got communicate if I need to, but if I don't need to, I won't. Like it's just I don't know. I'm not small talking a lot. Um, I don't know. But yeah, that you're making me think about it because I'm like sometimes I don't even realize that's what I'm doing. But yeah, that is what I'm doing. Yeah.
I don't feel like you're much of a small talker anyway, to be honest with you, man.
I'm more of a small talker than Danny.
To who?
Than Danny Foley. Like Danny doesn't small talk at all. At all. Like he will not small talk at all. Like it's either
Yeah, that's not in his vocabulary.
yeah, it's either like the most important conversation you ever had or nothing.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
exactly. And that's why we love him.
I love Danny. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why we love him. All right,
Mm-hmm.
man, let's wrap things up. Last thing, I want these little chats to be short, and this is I've already gone over, and I knew I would. So apologies for your
I
time.
got plenty of time. My
Yeah, I
kids don't
know,
get back for
but I
40
really I
minutes.
want to respect our listeners' time, and they probably want to hear
Okay.
more of you. They don't want to hear more of me, as I
Yeah,
said. So
right.
let's try
It's
and
your
keep.
podcast.
It's not. It's your podcast, man. So let's keep. I want to keep it less than 45 minutes, and I think we're going to do that. This is a question. I don't really want to get into questions that many others ask, but I feel like this is a really good question and it's something that I really enjoy answering when people ask me it. But what is one big thing, or maybe a couple of big things that you've changed your mind on? Like a big thing. And that can be like that can be sport, it can be anything. Like a big thing that, man, you look back and man, that was just wrong. Why was I doing that? And it could be something philosophical or something that you're actually doing within, could be a technique or an exercise or a drill or a programming thing. Anything that you look back and you just say, man, that wasn't it.
Yeah, well I'll start with like the relevant and like smaller thing. And that's just sprint drills.
Mm,
Um I think we've had I started that route in 2022 talking to you
yeah.
and you kind of told me like I don't really do them anymore. And then I played around with like going back and forth in 2023. I played back and forth in 24, and then this year I was like, screw it, I'm not gonna do any. Um,
Let's first, before we let's define what you're meaning here by a sprint drill.
just any vertical like marching, switching,
Okay.
triples,
Okay.
high knees,
Okay.
wall drills, um, anything with like a low velocity.
Yeah.
It's highly technical, right?
Yeah.
So I pretty much took all of it out this year, and I was terrified.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I always had some in there. It's kind of like a blanket because it was like a way of teaching things. Like it was also a way for me to show people like I knew what I was talking about because I could like
Mm.
coach it a certain way.
Yeah.
And like I found myself this year. I'm like, damn, have I said anything? Like I'll be 35 minutes into the session. I have zero words out my mouth. I'm like,
Perfect.
geez, do I suck?
Mm. I love it.
So so basically that was a huge thing. And it was also an adjustment for the staff because they like were used to like going in and fixing all these things and showing value because you get these high end guys that come from universities and like you want to show your value. But I had this one kid come to me day one. He's the most confident athlete I've ever worked with. And he proved me wrong in like 7, 8 different ways that I can talk about later. But he came to me and said, "Hey, yo, look, before you start coaching me, I want you to know that I don't believe there's any way to change my technique. This is how I run, and this is how I want to run, and this is how I'm going to run. So if you spend 15 minutes teaching me, like, I'm just going to let it go over my head and just do what I do."
Really?
Yeah, it was
That's
so funny.
great, man. I love that
He
somebody's got the confidence to come and tell you that.
he said every single coach has tried to fix him,
Yeah,
and it's worked backwards.
right.
So I said, "Okay, cool. You'll be the test on me then." He's like, "For what?" I'm like, "I'm not doing sprint drills this year, so you'll be a test on me. Like, we'll see if you run well or not." And the kid ran a 4.4 at 210 pounds. Like, and I'll show you the video. He ran like a badass kid, like running from, I don't know, like a dog. It just looks crazy, but it works.
That's great.
So anyway, like this year, the whole plan was like, okay, we're not going to try to fix things through sprint drills. We're going to do it through loading. We're going to do it through resistance, assistance, all those things. And I was terrified going into it.
Mm.
But we improved. We had a 3.5% improvement across everyone so far, not including we still have 15 more guys to go, but
Yep.
it's normally about 2.8, 2.5 to 2.8. So
Okay.
far so good.
Right.
We did have dribbles. We did dribbles. I think were really impactful for us.
Yeah.
Wickets, but those are like higher velocity drills, and we even like classified them where we would go green, yellow, red. So green would be like stationary and static drills, and really the rule was like do as little of those as possible. Now, obviously, like if you had a guy that was like somewhat hurt and he needed to do like all he could do was some marching, okay, cool, we did it, but it almost didn't happen at all. And then the yellows were like drills, like more bridge. You would call them bridge stuff, like single step pushes, double pushes,
Yeah.
dribbles, like things like that. We did a decent amount of that, and then the red was like the fast stuff. We just did a lot more of that. So that was a change because if you bought a program for me or listened to me in, I don't know, the past 5 years, like I was on the opposite end of it, like drill, 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 and then run.
Yeah.
And then this year we're just like run, and then if it needs fixing, we'll do this. If it doesn't, we won't do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Man, there's a massive lesson in that, man. We could probably do a whole hour or a whole day talking about that specifically, but I love that. And I hope people kind of just, all right, what was Les talking about there? Let me dive a little deeper into that and learn a little bit more about that because I think there's so much power in what you just said. There really is.
No, thank you.
No, that's
Yeah,
not
but
how people get faster. That's not how people correct stuff through drills. It ain't it. And there's some drills, again, it's why I asked you to define what you mean. There's some drills are really useful drills, quote unquote,
hmm
that can help. And, you're working here with elite NCAA football players
hmm
who have great capacity for movement, who are all pretty fast, pretty strong, pretty powerful. You're not working with 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds. So we're not saying necessarily to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There may be room
yeah.
for some types of drills for people who don't have any coordination at all and don't know the left
hmm
from the right. Absolutely. But the relevance of vertical, especially low velocity hip
hmm
flexion drills to high velocity hip extension tasks like sprinting,
hmm
zero. And I would say
Yeah.
that it's probably negative. The people
Yeah.
who do those well are the slow people.
Yeah. I it's funny because like I was texting some of the guys that I trained like 8 years ago, for example, during the combine process, and I'm like, yo, if I trained you now, I would do so much better. I was like, I'm sorry, like because like I look back at their training programs, like I always go back and I'm like, what did I do back then? Jeez, like I spent 40 minutes teaching vertical drills, 40 minutes, and then we ran 3 reps.
Yeah,
Well, no wonder why you ran slow. You
right.
executed everything perfectly, and you ran slow.
Because you
All
only
right,
got 3 reps.
yeah, 3 reps. So this year, like I mean, our volume was like way higher than I normally do. I mean, significantly higher. But the benefit was when it came time to unload, we could actually unload from something.
Mm,
So
mm,
like when we would unload, we have like a couple different unload periods. it was a major change. Like everything, like wellness was up, jumps were up, speeds were up,
Yeah.
and then we go back in. It was insane. Even things like just the warm up, like we were unloading from the warm up by just cutting out some of the like general stuff, and guys were running faster. So it was almost like I could choose what day I want you to run fast based on how we unload from certain things. So that was a huge lesson for me, huge lesson. But it also made me realize, like, dang, like how valuable am I as a coach? Like, I don't know, it was kind of a depressing point because I thought if you asked me in 20 like 17 18, I thought I was the best coach in the world when it came to the combine stuff. And I'm like, man, it's not that hard. It's really not. So it's interesting.
Mm. Yeah, I feel like that question is a good one because it it reveals who really and truly are like lifelong learners and trying to figure out the best way to do this thing.
Hmm.
Because if you can't answer that question, if you don't have a whole laundry list of things, big things that you may have changed your mind on,
Hmm.
then you're not learning, man. You're just repeating the same thing that you've done, and you're
Yeah,
seeking confirmation for what you're already doing. We should always be questioning our process, and that's one of the biggest things I love about you and your work. You're always doing that, man. So big respect to you for that.
I appreciate that.
Big respect to you for everything that you do, how you carry yourself.
Thank you, man. I owe you.
Favorite
I
people,
owe,
man. It's keep inspiring me, keep inspiring everybody.
I owe you, man. For real. No, thank you. Like I basically base everything off of what you tell me during that year, and then I just try it again. I try it the next year. Like, all right, well, here we go. So I appreciate it.
You're being overly
I'm
humble, but I
I'm
appreciate the shout out.
dead serious. All right, let's try it. If it doesn't work, I'll just blame it on Stu.
Blame Stu. No,
Hasn't failed yet though, so
it's not gonna fail, man. Come on.
I don't know.
Show
Maybe
some
one of these. Yeah.
show some
Maybe.
respect. Come on.
Yo,
Anyways, yeah, we'll link up soon. I
let's do
appreciate
it.
you. I do.
Let's do it.